Welcome to the technical session on architecture of the annual International Research Conference 2022. Faculty of Built Environment and Spatial Sciences of General Sir John Kotalawala Defence University. This session will be evaluated by Architect Associate Professor Dr. M.N.R. Vijayatunga, Dr. Ravihansa Chandratilaka, and Planner Dr. T.G.U.P. Perera. This technical session will be chaired by Professor Lalith de Silva, Emeritus Professor of University of Moratuwa and Head of the School of Architecture, Sri Lanka Institute of Information Technology. Now I cordially invite the rapporteur of the session, Architect N.M. R.A.T. Navaratna, to introduce the session chair.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the technical session on architecture. It's my pleasure and great honor to introduce one of my teachers, Professor Lalith de Silva, as the chair of this session. Professor Lalith de Silva was a former dean of the Faculty of Architecture, University of Moratuwa. He's a renowned academic and a researcher and over 25 years of experience, and has possessed 39 years of experience as a practicing architect. During his career, he has partnered with many local and international companies by offering his expertise in designing a wide range of construction from small projects to skyscrapers. He is the principal architect and the proprietor of Habitat Chartered Architects and Engineers, and at present holds the position of head of the School of Architecture of Sri Lanka Institute of Information Technology. Professor Lalith de Silva has held a variety of positions in numerous professional bodies, being an active member in the profession and a fellow member of Sri Lanka Institute of Architects. Professor Lalith held positions as the president of Sri Lanka Institute of Architects in 2003 to 2005, former chairman of Architects Registration Board, and a member of Board of Architectural Education SLIA during 2005 to 2007. Further, he is a corporate member of Royal Institute of British Architects, was the president of Organization of Professional Association Sri Lanka, and a former member of Board of Management of Urban Development Authority. During his career as an academic, Professor Silva has significantly contributed in uplifting the Faculty of Architecture, University of Moratuwa. He has received many distinguished awards, including the Outstanding Research Personnel Award of University of Moratuwa and the Highly Commended Paper Award at the World Construction Symposium consecutively for 2 years. He has published his research work in over 40 journals and conferences worldwide. Dear Professor, I cordially invite you to chair the session.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome all of you for the session 3 of the conference in architecture. Now, from yesterday, after the inauguration, we have heard many speakers in different facets of industry, commerce, economy, architecture, and today we are going to discuss about four presentations, and there are 4 presenters. P.T. Wickramasinghe. May I call them? Yeah. Can I invite them to be seated in the head table? P.T. Wickramasinghe, Miss P.T. Wickramasinghe, first presenter. She is going to speak on potential architecture on therapeutic educational space for school-age children with autism spectrum disorder in Sri Lanka. Then the second speaker is Miss GPRC Abeysekara. She is going to present a paper on preventive measures for the fire accidents in apartment buildings in Sri Lanka. The third presenter is Mr. T.S. Asoka. The fourth presenter, Ms. T. Perera. Mr. Asoka is going to do a presentation on investigation of the potential of using an alternative finishing material for countertop construction at a cost-effective solution. So this kind of cost-effective solutions will be very useful in the era where there are a lot of bans on importation of material that we use on countertops. So let's see. The fourth presenter is going to do a presentation on impact of urban morphological transformation on legibility of all neighbourhoods, with a special reference to old Colombo Kandy main road in Mawanella. So with that, so may I now invite the first speaker to do the presentation.
Good afternoon. School is the second home to a child. When architecture is responsible of creating spaces to improve psychological well-being, the school atmosphere has a significant influence on the quality of education. But the question is, do those design solutions work in the same way for children who already have cognitive or sensory difficulties since birth? And that was the start of this study, Potential of Architecture on Therapeutic Educational Spaces for School-Aged Children with Autism Spectrum Disorder in Sri Lanka by P.T. Wickramasinghe and MLNH Premarathna. Here's the overview of this presentation. Up to 2% of the global population has ASD, and millions of people worldwide are affected. Among them, a considerable amount live in less developed countries such as Sri Lanka. A study conducted by 2009 found an autism prevalence affecting 1 in 93 children between 18 and 24 months. Since the global autism population is on the rise, the prevalence could be higher. Autism awareness is growing in Sri Lanka, but slowly. As a part of awareness and the acceptance of ASD, some programs and communities relate to the condition. But among these activities, architects' contribution is less mentioned but equally important. Thus, they are very rare to see well-utilized special needs schools for autistic children under specified principles and guidelines on environmental considerations for therapeutic educational spaces. Furthermore, there is a lack of research examining the impact of the built environment on autistic children based on their psychological and physical needs in the Sri Lankan context. So this study is aimed to explore the contribution of environmental, psychologically, physically friendly architecture to developing skills, emotions, and mental statements of children with ASD. Autism or ASD is a neurological disability. It can diagnose at any age, and it defines as a developmental disorder because the symptoms usually appear within the first 2 years of life. There is a wide variation in the type and severity of symptoms people experience with social interaction, communication, and repetitive behavioral issues. They are known as sensory issues that occur with deficits in sensory processing. Typically, people receive information based on all their senses as a group. This ability is called sensory processing, and it is needed to decide how to respond to a situation. American psychologist Carl H. Delacato defines a range of 3 different sensory processing capabilities vary across a spectrum. First, hypersensitivities who are over-responding to their physical environment. Second, hyposensitivities who need more sensory stimuli to successfully process sensitive information, and interferences in the middle. By understanding the mechanism of ASD and needs of the autistic user, sensory environments can design positively to control the sensory input and modify autistic behaviors. There are many literature in this regard. They have mentioned creating responsive sensory environments like these physical spaces that support increased mind-body connection, develop skills, and expand social interaction can be a powerful tool for dealing with ASD. Each boy and girl is different. No 2 autistic children have identical educational needs. They need a comfortable distance between themselves and others. Ideally, educational spaces should design individually to accommodate their individualized symptoms. Also, they should be where all students can reach their highest potential regardless of physical and mental limitations. Many international architects work for autism. So I found 3 of them fundamental. In 2008, architect Magda Moratuwa worked on spatial zoning. She mentioned the use of sensory zoning on behalf of the functional zoning. In 2011, study by a group of researchers, namely Sanchez, Vasquez, and Serrano, claimed on the use of lighting levels. And in 2016, a study conducted by Kinnell, Balmers, and Hayline also mentioned some significant points as you see on the screen. The methodology consists 3 aspects: literature review to derive specified architectural parameters, case studies to compare and analyze existing models under identified architectural parameters, and finally interviews to study the Sri Lankan context for the accuracy of the final discussion. After studying literature on relevant theories, the following parameters has identified as significantly influencing architectural aspects of designing therapeutic educational spaces for autistic children. When it comes to the case studies, under the discovered architectural parameters, spatial qualities of 5 international centers were studied. All of them are unique and research-based design outcomes considering maximizing the quality of their service. After comparing each, some significant features were identified as mutual to all. They are likely easy accessibility, the strong connection with the natural environment as displayed. As the local case study, Autism Child Development Center Maharagama, the only government-run educational therapy center for children with ASD in Sri Lanka, was studied under the same specific parameters. But currently, in comparison to the global, design approaches adopted in here proved not appropriate. Researchers confirmed that children with autism spectrum disorder face difficulties adapting to spaces that do not consider about their neurological abilities and sensory perception. A specially designed educational environment begins with an understanding of the range of their symptoms across the spectrum. These architectural suggestions must support the person-environment relationship by responding to their unique sensory processing, because the literature has proven that many design considerations for ASD are good practices for all. This study has conducted an extensive interviews with selected 15 caregivers in 2 stages. Interview stage 1 is to understand the school-aged autistic children in Sri Lanka. Comparatively, literature findings and interviews show that a child's sensory symptoms and behavioral patterns do not differ with the location but depend on the context interaction. Interview stage 2 helped to understand the current architectural contribution to autism-friendly environments in the local context. Unfortunately, professionals who work for ASD haven't a clear idea of architecture and what it could do for the psychological well-being of an autistic child beyond the physical comfort. Moreover, the interviews noted the absence of concern in some important aspects of autism services buildings. There are many autism centers, but most of them used abandoned buildings in urban or suburban settings as a result of the lack of awareness of professional practices, including architects. So I spoke as much as I could in the time I had, but in this broad field, there is much that we found and what we have yet to find. In conclusion, when the challenges these children face can mediate through the assistance of architecture, we can directly see that their specific environmental sensitive needs are unconsidered in the educational built environment of our country. Further, there is a lack of autism-friendly housing, urban and building environmental alternatives, and continuing educational programs that cater for needs of people with ASD. So we all learn in our own ways, in our comfortable space. So why don't we make that space comfortable for them too? If we can see a child with autism as capable, interesting, and valuable, no amount of education or therapy will lay on top is going to matter. So these are the references I have referred. And finally, the special thank who helped the most, and thank you.
Thank you for the very interesting and educative presentation. So we'll have the question sessions at the end of the presentations. Now may I now invite the second presenter, Ms. Abeysekara.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm GPRC Abeysekara, and my research is preventive measures for fire accidents in apartment buildings in Sri Lanka. Fire is the main reason for deaths, property losses, and injuries every year worldwide. The potential for an accidental or a planned fire to endanger life, structural, and property safety in a building is known as fire hazard. The building height and the various activities done by people may lead for fire in high-rise residential buildings. But according to surveys, 75% of fires are avoidable. My research aim was to suggest preventive measures for fire accidents in apartment buildings in Sri Lanka. And my objectives as follows: identifying the reason for fire in apartment buildings Sri Lanka, identifying the current situation in Sri Lankan apartment building fire prevention, and identifying the current situation in worldwide apartment buildings fire prevention. And this was my research process. In the literature review, according to the statistical data of WHO, more than 300,000 deaths happen yearly, and more than 95% occur in low and middle income countries. The Grenfell Tower in West London, the Torch Tower in Dubai, and the Marco Polo apartments in Honolulu can be identified as tragic residential fire accidents that happened recent decade, which were simply preventable. Table number 1 shows the facade-related fire preventive measures used worldwide currently. Fire alarms. The fire alarm is required for all condominiums other than the common passages. And automatic and manual detection system should lie with every structure. And the building height. The preventive measures should vary as the height and the evacuation time is having a proportional relationship. All the active and passive fire systems are to be maintained properly. And smoke control should place in the evacuation routes to make the route clear from smoke. When it comes to sprinkler systems, the sprinkler system should place throughout the building but not outside. Fire access. The perimeter access should be within the building and it should be easily accessible. When it comes to research methodology, the design approach was quantitative research study and the research technique was survey method and the data collection was done using questionnaire survey and the data analysis was done using Power BI. When it comes to research findings, table number 2 shows the fire incident reported from 2050 to 2020 in Sri Lanka. All these data gathered from fire department. You all can see building fires, apartment building fires and the apartment building fires as a percentage. And the major reasons for occurring fires in Sri Lanka are faulty electric wiring, unawareness, ignorance, children activities, gas leakages, failure in electric equipment, as per the fire department details. When it comes to the questionnaire survey, my questionnaire survey had 21 questions under 5 sections. And the target group was the apartment building occupants. And it was based on the fire regulation codes published by ICTAD for buildings. And the primary objective was to find out the preventive measures currently practiced in Sri Lankan scenario. As these codes published accordance with the building height, as it is not practicable to obtain the total height from the building occupants, I obtained the total floors of each apartment, and after a simple calculation, like the floor height including the slab thickness as 3.5 meter, with the simple calculation, I came across with the table number 3. You all can see up to 18 meters having 5 floors, 8 into 30 meters, 6 to 8 floors, and more than 30 meters, 9-story upwards. And you all can see the sections of my questionnaire survey also. From here onward, some of my findings are graphically represented. You all can see the figure number 4, the count of building location. From that, 50% of the buildings in this up to 18 meter category are located in big traffic area. And 33.33 of the buildings in this category are located in high traffic area and 16.67 located in non-traffic area. In the figure number 7, it clearly states that only 33.33 of the buildings are having fire doors. With the time, I'll go forward. In the gas insulation, figure number 8, you all can see all the buildings in this category are having individual gas cylinders. And from that, only 50% of the gas cylinders are placed in open and exterior area. In the 18 to 30 meter building height category, figure number 13, you all can see the count of fire drill experience. And 70% of the occupants never experience a fire drill in this building category. And 20% are having once a year, and once in 6 months are having 10%. In the figure number 16, you all can see the count of building sprinkler. Only 40% of the buildings in this building category are equipped with sprinkler systems. In the gas insulation, figure number 20, you all can see 30% of the buildings in this category are having centralized gas systems. Others are having individual gas cylinders. From that 70%, only 14.29% of the buildings are placed in an exterior area. And other 85.71 are not. In the more than 30 meter building category, same as the above one, figure number 26 shows the count of fire drill experience, and 71.43% of the occupants never experience fire drill. And 21.43% are having once in 6 months, and 7.14 are having once a year. In here also, when it comes to count of fire alarm systems and the locations, figure number 33, you can see that 71.43 are having fire alarm systems in common corridors, and 21.43 are having in each apartment, which is mandatory, and 7.14 does not have fire alarms. And the data analysis, all the collected data analyzed according to the building height categorization, and all the issues are summarized as follows. Up to 18 meters, occupants never experience fire drill. Most of the buildings are not sprinklered, and equally 33.33 of the buildings do not have emergency assembly points and perimeter access. 50% of the building consists only one stairway. 50% of the unsprinkled buildings have more than 30-meter travel distance, likewise. In the 18 to 30-meter building height category, 70% never experience fire drill, no emergency assembly points and perimeter access for 50% and 30% respectively, and 60% of the buildings are not sprinkled, and 70% consists only one stairway, and 40% and 20% of the buildings have less than 1,000 kilo, and some are not, no passenger lifts respectively. In more than 30-meter building height category also same, more than 70% never experience fire drill, which is very critical, and 57.14 of the buildings have emergency assembly points on the ground floor, and 14.29 on the top floor, and 14.29 yet no emergency assembly points. When it comes to recommendations, it is recommended to have fire drills practice for once in 6 months or at least once a year. And it is recommended to construct the apartments in big traffic area or non-traffic area with perimeter access for easy accessible. And when it comes to emergency assembly points, if you are having emergency assembly points in ground floor or the top floor, it shall be easily accessible by firefighters. And when it comes to buildings, to be sprinkled, and inspection maintenance should done in once a month, and mechanical and electrical maintenance should done once a year. And each building shall consist of at least 2 staircases and more than 2 staircases for the building with more heights. And the max travel distance for the stairway is approximately 30 meters, or if your apartment building are having sprinkler systems, it is recommended to have approximate 45 meters. When it comes to passenger lifts, at least 1,000 kilo or more with special equipment. When it comes to fire doors, the fire doors shall be self-closing and opening in the direction of escape. In the gas installation, it is recommended to have centralized gas systems for apartments, especially with more than 20 units. And if you are having individual cylinders in your apartments, it is highly recommended to place the cylinders in open and exterior area. In the fire extinguishers and alarm systems, it is recommended to have alarm systems in each condominium. And the portable fire extinguishers to be placed in 1 meter above height. And the buildings more than 18 meters to equip with hydraulic hose reel, at least 1 hose reel in each floor. And the hose reel cabinet should not be locked in use of case emergency. And especially, it is highly recommended to conduct demonstration programs for public awareness for occupants. And these are the references which I used to prepare my presentation. And I would like to thank you. I would like to express my deepest appreciation to people who provided me with the possibility to complete this research successfully, and especially with the fire department and the participant who responded to my questionnaire survey. And thank you.
Very valuable recommendations given by Ms. Abeysekara for architects when they design buildings about fire safety. So, we'll move to the next presenter. investigating potential of using an alternative finishing material for countertop construction as a cost-effective solution. Architect HDS Asoka, over to you.
Facing to the issue, but I must brief the impact of economic crisis to the construction industry we all are dealing with. Right, economic crisis and construction industry. You can see the newspaper. Don't look at the below picture. Ratapura Idikirim Sierra Nuwak Navati. So construction is Sri Lanka's construction industry is facing thousands of job losses and a steep decline in construction projects due to the increase of cost of materials paired with the fuel and electricity crisis. Construction is one of the key sectors that has boosted the country's overall economic growth in the past. The sector provides employment for nearly 1 million people, including 600,000 direct jobs. So in that context, we have to stop 90% of the construction projects due to this situation. With over 70% of the depression of the rupee currency since March 7, construction material prices have risen nearly 3 times, even sometimes some materials are 4 times than previous. So government strategy, what is the government strategy? To face the dollar crisis is reducing of import trades, including construction materials. This has made a severe shortage of material and it's hard for the industry. Therefore, as we professionals need to find alternative for imported construction material to reduce the construction cost and ensure the material availability. So, this is our research for that purpose. Actually, yesterday, Professor Lalith Silva and Chartered QS Upulchand also mentioned about the situation. So this research is another effort for such alternative construction material. So investigation the potential of using an alternative finishing material for countertops, the pantry tops, construction as cost-effective solution. Pantry tops or countertops. Granite is the most popular finishing material for countertop construction. Even more than 75% of granite used for the countertops are imported from Middle East and countries like India. Due to the current economic crisis, the high price and shortage of granite can be observed in Sri Lankan market. So therefore, we cannot, it cannot afford for the middle income people. So you see these two pictures are granite, the most popular countertops. So before introducing alternative material, we have to think about what is the requirement, the property requirement. What are the properties? So heat resistance, stain resistance, strength and durability even for slender sections, because we know granite comes with even less than 1 inch thickness, so that property has to be there. Stretch resistance, glossy surface for easy cleaning, this is for the hygienic reasons, and aesthetically pleasing appearance due to color and texture patterns of that natural material. So we studied these things first. Then we identified ferrocement as construction material for this alternative construction material for this one. Ferrocement is, what is ferrocement? Ferrocement, you all know, even as students, ferrocement is composite material prepared by closely spaced one or multiple layers of mesh or small diameter rod which is entirely covered by cement matrix. You can see that in that picture, the small thickness, 12.5 mm maybe, but the reinforcement in small openings. Specialty is the ferrocement is the weight to reinforcement, total weight to the reinforcement weight is higher than typical RCC, reinforced concrete. So, methodology. Why did we select ferrocement? Yes, based on the properties of ferrocement, it is practical application if it was observed that this could be a useful as alternative because of that limited less thickness, slender sections you can get, but with higher strength. This thickness, track-in behaviors, and especially the resistance of the biological agents such as worm or fungus, right? So we studied the properties of ferrocement. We can make the body, countertop body from ferrocement, but that is not enough. Methodology. Then we wanted to improve the qualities of the material and check the cost effectiveness. So this is the methodology to develop for that purpose. As the first step, a cost comparison was done to identify the potential cost effectiveness of the proposed ferrocement countertop finish. A prototype model worktop in size 300 by 600 mm and the thickness is 20 mm was constructed on the site to calculate the unit rate for the construction. The mortar composition was maintained as cement to sand proportion is 1.5 to 2.5 ratio. Sand particles are less than 2 mm was used. That is for the typical reinforced ferrocement construction. We haven't changed anything for the ferrocement properties. Formwork, you can see formwork was made with timber, and we can use, because that is available material for us, but we can use the melamine, marine plywood is the base material, and the Portland cement and sand were used as the cement-based metric. Sand and cement were proportioned by weighting, 1.5 to 2.5. Square type steel mesh with 3 mm mesh opening size. You can see the mesh in between the cement matrix. The volume of the reinforcement is 4 to 8% in both directions, ensuring the homogeneous reinforcing structure. This is very important. It has to be homogeneous, not like other material. So we used actually 3 layers of steel mesh. After the curing time, cement tight. Thereafter, we got you can see the final image, the below one. last one, that is the ferrocement body slab with nearly 20 mm thickness. Therefore, but this is not enough, because we have to give that the ferrocement has kind of porosity, but we have to develop the surface. So therefore, we applied cement and titanium with color pigments to do the reduce the porosity and give the strength, and then the most important thing is the natural the granite finish look. It has to be there. So, and thereafter, finally, we applied a thin layer of epoxy on that. That's why this, in the last picture you can see even the water cannot attract to the body. That is so that because of that glossiness, very heavy, high glossy surface finish you can get. So thereafter, we calculate the cost for the production. You can see we considered all the materials, cement, sand, water, steel nets, the formwork, and the labor, right, everything, and the cost for the tools, curing, the finish layers, cement rendered, titanium finish, epoxy finish. Square foot rate for the finished product is 1,536 nearly. Square foot rate is 1,536.
I'll give you one more minute.
Yeah. So if we compare this is the product. If we compare this with the typical granite, the imported granite may be 3,600 to 4,000 rupees per square foot, and the local granite nearly 3,000 to 3,400. And according to our production, it will save nearly cost is saving is the percentage with the alternative material application is calculated is 41.7, even less than 50%. Therefore, based on this calculation, it is evident that the developed ferrocement countertop construction cost is significantly lower than granite countertop construction. So, thank you. At the end, I must say, all the architecture students and the quantity saving students, all the students here, we are in a crisis. Therefore, we have to give the solution for the crisis. So these are some other areas we can do that. This can be a small thing, but think small, detail, then we can give some solutions for that, because we have to save our stakeholders. We are entering into the construction industry. So for that, good luck.
Thank you, Architect Asoka, for the presentation and enlighten on the alternative materials, and I especially congratulate you on trying to do some tangible research, actual practical research. So we'll come to the question session and raise questions. Yeah. The fourth presenter is Miss T. Perera. Over to you. She's going to present a paper on the impact of urban morphological transformations on legibility of all neighbourhoods with special reference to all Colombo, Kandy Main Road in Mawanella.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here today to present about the impact of urban morphological transformation on legibility of all neighbourhoods with special reference to all Colombo Kandy Main Road, Mawanella. This is the content that I'm going to discuss further. Spatial form and urban composition are built over a long period of time. Social, political, economic, and many other reasons are stimulating the urban transformation that are evolving in the city form. According to Alcock, lump developments are overwhelming the characters of the ideal city form and doing radical changes to the city. On the other hand, Lynch mentioned that the same issue in another perspective, that whenever the city elements are loose or changing their character, the particular setting has been changed and the result is reducing the legibility of the space. Here I would like to give you a background of the research. In Sri Lanka, there are many of all neighbourhoods which inherit with unique characters, and current developments are slowly eroding their identities. Therefore, there is a deep need to investigate the impact of morphological transformation on legibility of such all neighbourhoods. Mawanella is one of older suburbs which directly and indirectly influenced by the development of Kandy and Kegol district. Since colonial period, Mawanella being a transitional point and the main gateway to the hill country. When the British built the Colombo Kandy Main Road as a trade path, a mix of commercial, residential, and linear settlements built along the road. As you can see, the series of photos of all Colombo Kandy Main Road, these all settlements on either side of the main road brought a unique meaning to the city. Current city developments which have been practiced during last 20 years highly impact on many traditional building structures, and as a result, some built masses are newly appeared and some have been disappeared from the city form. The problem is the development of road widening projects are carrying drastic changes to the existing urban form. Many of all settlements were erased by the uncontrollable development. The lack of focus on fading characters of the traditional urban setting is leading to effect on particular spatial qualities and are unable to fulfill through the current urban setting. My research objectives are to identify the morphological transformation of the case study area, to understand how the city elements were adapted to morphological changes over the last 20 years, to identify how morphological changes influencing the legibility of the study area. The significance of this study, an attempt to understand the morphological character of the traditional city and how current deviations impact on the spatial qualities of the city. Identify how all neighbourhoods contribute to create legible environment. Research findings as a toolkit of urban design to be applied while doing future developments on all neighbourhoods, addressing the main issue, the impact of morphological transformation on legibility for small, older neighbourhoods. According to the methodology, I have used a mixed method because a different phase of the study requiring both quantitative and qualitative approaches. During the research process, two methods were adopted for the analyzing morphological transformation of the study area, analyzing morphological transformation impact on legibility. These are the list of identified key parameters and the parameters of urban morphology identified through the literature. First one is urban pattern, serial vision along the main artery, facade articulation. As I mentioned earlier, for the case study, I have selected settlements on either side of the Colombo Kandy Main Road of Mawanella. As a linear city, most of traditional built masses tend to densify along the main artery. Therefore, the easiness of the study, the whole study area was broken into 3 blocks. A linear stretch along the road Each block is approximately 500 meter lengthier, and the width of the block will be 50 meters extend from the road edge. These are the data collection tool. The transformation of the urban grain, building orientation, and the building footprint was studied by evaluating figure ground maps of the years. For the analyzing, it was introduced a grading matrix and a color coding system for the urban grain and the building footprint. This is the summary, the methodological framework. When it comes to the results and analysis, the first key parameter is changing components of morphology. Under this category, I supposed to discuss about the urban grain of transformation. The urban grain has been changed over the last 20 years of the selected area. The fineness of the grain was differed in each selected blocks. Considerably, block 1 and block 3 were largely affected due to road development, and the number of buildings were demolished. Also, the building footprint has transformed over the last 20 years. Majority of buildings which had small footprint are old colonial buildings and residential. Usually, large footprints are belonging to the public space and large malls. Building orientation did not show a drastic change in the study area. Compared to urban grain, building footprint was highly affected due to morphological transformation. Therefore, from the components of morphology, building footprint was provided greater contribution to the changing pattern of the physical setting. Under the serial vision, 80% of city elements were adapted to alteration over last 20 years, and according to visual survey and the perceptual study can be identified that old elements are evolving, creating an overall city image rather than new one. This is the cognitive mapping based on user perception, and we can clearly identify all the elements are the strongly contributing to read the city rather than new elements. The road width of the main artery was doubling due to the road widening project. Therefore, the perception study was revealed that the expanded road width was effect on respondents' comfortability, and the current condition of the road is more comfortable to vehicular movements. According to the visual survey, the rhythm of the space was created by both horizontal and vertical components of the facade, but gradually it was fading over the time with the absence of components. Perception study revealed that visual harmony which was offered by the traditional facade were unable to pursue through the contemporary facade. Under the symbolic direction with its image and function, I have identified all shop houses were expressing the symbolic meaning that the rich socio-economic background of the Mawanella, as well as Utwankanda mountain is another significant landmark which providing the sense of direction and the axial view along the main road, framing the distance view of the mountain. The spectrum of different age facade, including colonial, post-colonial, and contemporary, have been transformed over last period of time. As you can see, visual obstacles are overwhelming the detailed appearance of the facade, and that unique contrast was unable to perceive through the monochromatic facade of new buildings. Under the scale and proportion, the average facade width of colonial and post-colonial facade is about less than 15 meters, and predominantly they are built in single or two stories. Contemporary building facade width is about 3 meters or 25 meters and can be reached up to 5 or more stories. Respondents were enjoyed with more welcoming and wide entrances included with single or double storied height of traditional building. This diagram clearly shows that the horizontal vertical components of the facade, skyline, and the building edge are the determinants for the visual cue. According to the small visual cues are created by remaining elements of traditional building facades. such as opening, balconies, wall detail, skyline. Also, horizontal and vertical rhythm of the facade and skyline of the traditional setting contributed to create the large visual cues. This diagram also clearly showing the relative width of the street and the dimension of the facade are the main contribution to create the contextual cue, wherein road width and the heights of the building were leading to undefined enclosure result in lack of legibility of the road. Finally, under the conclusion, the overall findings relating to the transformation of urban morphology and its impact on legibility can be summarized as follows. According to the user perception study and the cognitive mapping, I have identified that the city image of the Mawanella strongly attached with its unique traditional elements. Also, there has a considerable change of the urban grain and the footprint during last 20 years. Traditional buildings were helped to create fine grain pattern and gradually transformed to coarse grain pattern included large clusters due to rapid commercial development. Individual buildings with large footprints contribute to reduce the fineness of the urban grain of Mawanella. Building orientation was less contribute on the morphological changes. Then the ribbon development of the main artery caused to change in the road width and the varying heights of the building made confusion on the street enclosure. The cladding facade made monochromatic building interface along the road. This is also another example that may largely affect over last 10 years. All shop houses by the road providing symbolic meaning on rich socio-economic background, but the existing city image does not reflect the same sense when passing through the main artery from Colombo to Kandy. Finally, the recommendation is all linear neighborhoods like Mawanella threatened by uncontrollable ribbon developments. Therefore, the identity of the city does not clearly appear from the physical environment. Therefore, my recommendation is visual cues and the path enclosures are the main concern of all neighborhoods when perceiving its legibility. Thus, the development research design can be used as a reference in designing all the neighborhoods. Further research outcomes are able to use in developing different levels of planning policies relating to urban rejoining projects and of all neighborhoods in Sri Lanka. These are the references that I have studied. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Perera, for the presentation on urban morphology with special reference to Colombo Kandy Main Road in Mawanella. Now the four presenters have completed their presentations. We first heard the presentation on a very crucial and important issue in Sri Lanka. According to her, 2% of the population is with autism. So it is a problem to be addressed, and she has very well addressed that, how space can be designed, and the main reason may be because of lack of funding for this kind of schools. They adopt old buildings and reuse them to provide school facilities for children with autism deficiency. So that was very enlightening. I have a question. Now, does the Minister of Education or the Department of Education doing anything about this autistic children?
So, as I mentioned in the presentation,
there is a one autism center. Yeah, that's Maharagama, and it is run by the educational authorities, and yeah, that is the only thing. But it not designed in architecturally or not depends on their environmental needs, and that's it.
That means for the entire country only one place in Maharagama?
Yeah, it's the only one government-run autism center.
Right. So is that place affiliated to any school?
No.
It's all alone, independent. Yes. So we can see the criticality of that issue. So if it is not attached to a school and if it is all alone, then how can the education be given to people with that kind of syndrome? Right. Audience or anybody has a question from her?
Yeah, Tashini. I have one question. The thing is that now there are in most of the government schools, there's a class called special class, which caters for differently abled children. Now, if that class is modified, can we use the same class to cater for the autism children as well? Can we put them together with the other differently abled children, or? Two different.
You cannot merge them. Autism students, especially able means they cannot be rectified. But autism can be rectified in due course.
Autism is not a disability. Some of these students have more abilities than, I mean, when you take some of the aspects, they are more able than normal students. If you find, you can identify the potential of these students, they have more potential than normal students.
So I think we should.
Have you seen Mainland? Then my name is Khan. My name is Khan. And Mainland. They all talk about people with autism. They are capable. They are capable and normal people. If you identify that in the common, that is the problem that we have.
So they can focus on something and then.
But they don't get misunderstand. They are not the differently able.
They are not different. They are more capable and more discovery.
So any other question from the audience? So that paper actually enlightened us and gave new knowledge to us that there's only one center for the entire nation. That is a real critical problem, and not specially designed for that purpose as well. So that is a matter that has to be brought to the notice of the Department of Education and the Minister of Education. So thank you very much for doing that research. It is for more than architecture, it is for humanity. We value it. Thank you. Then the next presenter is next to me. Yeah, give her applause. Yeah, okay. Thank you. Next presenter is did a presentation, Miss Abeysekara, right, on fire accidents in apartment buildings. Very important. Now we know as architects, our main source of income has been during the last 10 or 15 years by doing apartments. So how we handle the fire protection of those buildings were discussed at her paper. Now, I have taken some notes, right? And your main cause of fire was cooking gas, is it? Overall, yeah. no, what I mean, you recommend that it should be centralized gas rather than individual cylinders.
According to the ICTAD fire regulations, we have to use centralized gas systems, especially with apartment.
Right. And you mentioned about sprinklers about 1 meter.
No, sir, not the sprinklers.
Then fire detectors.
No.
Then
The fire extinguishers.
fire extinguishers.
Yes.
That is
It's
manual.
also in the ICTAD regulations.
So there are places where there is no extinguishers at
Yes,
1
sir.
meter level. So these are very critical things when the architects design, right? And then my last question for you is, that I'll give now. Before we get the approval from the UDA or the municipal council, we have to get the fire clearance from the fire chief, and after construction, it has to be complied to get the COC and to sell the apartments. So the percentages that you mentioned, only 70% is covered or 60% is covered, various percentages you give. How can they get the approval to sell the apartment without having compliant to those requirements? Something wrong with the fire department. Yeah,
Actually,
with us.
it's a problem because I think most of the occupants are not aware about this, and even we have the fire regulations. If it is not practicing in Sri Lanka, or if it is unaware by the occupants, there is no point of having fire regulations. So that's the problem.
Yeah, I don't accept that answer because a consumer need not to know the law or the regulations. The person who sell that apartment, person who build that apartment should comply it to the regulations and sell. Otherwise, he is doing an offense, right? And the authority to control that is the fire department. If the fire department is not checking on them and not prosecuting them, it is actually their fault. Because we are subjecting the innocent occupants of those apartments into trouble, right? So your percentages of those statistics may be true, but how it happens is the real problem for us, because architects are there, MEB engineers are there. You know, most of us have designed multi-story apartment building, right? And currently I have 2 apartment projects. You know, we have to go to the fire chief and get the approval for all the sprinklers, everything, and comply to get the UDA approval. Then, after construction also, they come and inspect, and fire chief has to recommend that it is built accordingly, and then only they can sell through the condominium approval. So all these checkpoints are there. How it happens is the problem now. My question is that. You know, you can't do anything about it, but I think the authority has to do it, and the audience should know it. It is not the fault of the consumer. Yeah, you have a question.
I think the condominium management authority.
Yeah, condominium authority is there.
Yeah, so that I think they will have to. They will be a stakeholder.
Yeah.
In the construction of the, so they have some responsibility when it comes to that.
Yeah. And you cited Glenfall Tower fire, that is because of wrong material usage. Those are actually mistakes of architects and engineers, right? Those things that we should avoid as professionals. But as developers, builders, their responsibility is to provide everything and comply. Any other question from the audience, please?
I think now, say, most of your researches are based on presumptions like questionnaire survey and all.
Yeah.
I think a research of this nature should have been done with the practical examples, fire-affected buildings as such, right? And in Colombo, most of the apartments are, without COCs. That's why one of the leading company, they can't sell the apartments. That is because they have not taken the fire requirement, the fire certificate. So therefore, without fire certificate, you can't get the COC. That's that. And then, of course, the fire. I have seen you refer to the fire services department, but you have never referred to the 2018 the fire regulations. They're very strict on the apartment and very strict on the regulations, right? So there are certain guidelines. In some of the guidelines are very difficult to, meet. Right, so we are facing lot of difficulties in meeting the fire regulations and designing the buildings, right? So if you select several examples, fire-affected buildings, and took them as examples, and then analyzed it, that would have been a better research, I think.
No, that's the thing. The former Director General of UDA is there.
No, can I say what she want to do is, now even, even the occupiers also should know your fire, should know their means of it. That's what she told.
Yeah.
Because everybody now, if I go to a building, I first check from my room, what is the fire escape. Because emergency, they should know. That's why she's telling, and they should have fire drills. Hotels are having fire drills. But apartments, I have not seen anything, right? So what she says, the occupier should know. If you have a kind of, due to oil, something happens, you don't put water.
I agree.
Yes, so that's what she wants to have a awareness of what are these, how do safeguard your building. Most of, I don't think they, a lot of people, curtains and all these things, what happens in drapes, I think Kandy, the whole thing got burned. So they didn't know how to manage. If it is
how
oil,
to escape, how to escape.
Escape, how to, if there's a, if there's a oil spill, you can't throw water, right? So there are how to avoid, not how to manage fire. That's why.
Agree. Fire drills are meant for making awareness of how to prevent and how to fight.
That's why when you are getting to a flight, first thing they say, these are the things most of the people, they don't care. But you should know where is your evacuation or a lot of other things there. So that's what most of the occupiers, they will not know anything. They will blame the fire department, they will shout and everything. But if we know whether, some people will go up even.
No, some people will jump out of the balcony and die.
Yeah, that's why in Russia, yes. So that's a very important point she told. The occupier should know how to escape.
Yes.
Or how to avoid, or how to, something happens, then what are the things you should, I think you and me also, in my case, I went with the fire chief. He told, better check your fire escape first. From your bedroom, from the hotel room, check the fire escape. What is the shortest distance? Okay.
Yeah, generally in hotels, there's a like drawings fixed on the rear side of the door where you are and the fire escape and shortest route, So that is awareness. No, I agree with her recommendation that the fire drill should be maintained and awareness should be made. But what I am asking, how is happened? How there are no sprinklers, how there are no fire detectors, how there is no firefighting equipment. No, I think this kind of conferences are there to reveal all this and make awareness among all of us, where to hit, right, where to pin, right. We should pin as professionals. The developers cannot escape with by deceiving the innocent customers or purchasers, right. Thank you. Right, the next person is our architect.
Excuse me.
Yeah, he was talking about alternative materials, manufacturing, and first I told you that it is very, very rare to see architects doing like actual research with testing of materials and mixing cement with hands and all that. So that is very good research. But I have a question. But what is shown on the first picture was not granite, it was like marble, isn't it? The first picture that you all saw about the pantry top.
So the first picture actually it was our product, the final product.
Oh, that was your final product. Yeah. Oh, right. It looks like marble, not like granite.
Yeah.
Right. And the other thing is, even the natural material like granite and marble are porous. If you drop something, that can be absorbed. That is the nature of the material. How is your product? Is it sealed?
For the granite, the water absorption is very less. If you compare with the marble is the water absorption
but
is
still
high.
it stains, no?
Yeah. In our product, that's why we put an epoxy coating, but because epoxy considered as the water absorption is very minimum. Actually, no water absorption.
It's a paint type.
Yeah, paint type. So, in our product, we have that the water absorption, less water absorption quality. even than definitely than marble, but for the we have to do the lab test for that. We have to tell that after the lab test. We are in this case we did the price comparison basically.
So I wish in future we'll have Asoka manufactured marble or something in the market.
Yeah, definitely. We are trying that. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Congratulations.
And last time also we did something flooring, flooring material.
Yeah, yeah. We are producing now.
Thank you. So the last presenter was Miss T. Perera. Yeah, that side. Yeah, I forget the names, right. Now, you touch upon a very important subject with development, with widening of roads, the morphology change. But we have been unable to capture the historical and all neighborhoods and the patterns, and except in some places. So you explain it very well how the Mawanella has been transformed, right? And now, has it happened only along the main road or interior as well?
Yes, sir. Along the main artery.
Along the main artery.
Yeah.
Because that increases the land market, the land prices, so that they have to go like multi-story buildings, then the character cannot be maintained. So, do you have any solution now? You know, this has happened along the Gold Road, along the Kandy Road, along main arteries, right? I think it is common to Sri Lanka and urban development, especially in Sri Lanka, urban development. Every street is a township, right? I have been to China. Even in China, there's no townships longer than Gold Road or longer than Kandy Road, because from Colombo up to Kandy, it's a shop area, you know, all sides. But I remember when we were small boys, when we were traveling to Kandy, the Mawanella area with, you know, Tuankanda and all that now is vanishing. You can't see it from the road now. And most of the spice gardens are now being excavated and then leveled and buildings are put, right? So how can we say UDA former director also is there? How can we monitor and control this kind of urban development, as you think? Should we do that or should we not do that?
Sometimes we have to do that, but we have to consider about the traditional layers of the city. If we cannot pursue through the current environment.
Put the mic. Okay.
If we cannot pursue through the current environment, even we can consider about the characters of the traditional layers. Then we can get the essence of to the current. We can get the essence to the current policies when we are making.
Right. Now it just reminded me about the Kajugama, you know, the former president tried to change the former Kajugama. He built a cul-de-sac like stall area, but everybody has abandoned that and now come back to the road with linear development. So, you know, we are trying to capture the bypasses as our customers. So that is the main thing happening in Sri Lanka. So at least, as now in Kandy, there are some development regulation that the Kandy character has to be maintained in buildings, right? So whether we can have any regulation like that?
Not that. I think what happened to, like, you should give a value. Now, Golf Fort, earlier like 60s, 70s, 80s, there was no value, right? But, you know, suddenly a lot of, I think, Professor Manado is here, where now it's very expensive. Earlier nobody wants to buy because there are restrictions, right? You can't build. But there was a kind of I think most of these foreigners, they knew the value, they bought the property, and they are happy with all these conservation things. So Mawanella, any street facade, if you can get a value, there's no value for that now. The owners wants to do a commercial building there. But Golf Course is a good example. I think Manaval will elaborate on this. So you have to get a value for what, not for commercial value. it's a kind of a heritage value. Right now, it's Colombo, same value. The land values are same in Fort, Galle Fort, and Colpiti. Right. So that value is, I think, is if you can get that value for that, give some kind of a, say this is identity, right? Then things will. Otherwise, even Colombo Fort will go one day.
That shows money is everything.
Yeah, but regulations very difficult. I think if Professor Manood can.
I think I have a long experience in, with the Galle Fort. I will get only one good example. So the project was assigned to me from the Netherlands culture, under the Netherlands cultural grant, to preserve the private houses in the Galle Fort. At that time, there were properties with 5 perches which they could not sell for 5 million, right? So I selected about 60 houses and then gave a facelift. My concept was to, regenerate the social aspect of the streetscape. And it was well accepted by these people. And I get one example. There was one house which I completely renovated, complying with my own concept. And then, of course, which was not able to, that person was trying to sell it for 5 million. He could not sell it for 5 million. After the renovation, he was able to sell the property for 50 million to a German person. 50 million, 10 times the cost, 5 perch land. And then, of course, then he wanted to have the house with 2 floors. I improved that one with 2 floors, but adhering to the concept, already prevailing concept that the cityscape or the streetscape. And then I prepared the plan. With the plan, without doing the improvement, he sold it to a Danish architect for 70 million. So my plan worth 20 million, right? And then the architect came to me and said that I'm an architect, but I don't want to change your concept, and I wanted to complete the house, and he completed it. You can see the example. It is number 2 in the Rampart Road, just next to the Dutch Hospital, 2-story building. So 5 million house ultimately ended up with 70 million with a foreigner. And now the foreigners are buying that properties because they really appreciate the values of the heritage values. So we did not do anything other than regenerate the facade architecture to an architecture of foregone days. Renovation. It's a retrofittings.
So heritage has a value if it is properly marketed and awareness is created. So thank you very much for enlightening us. So we'll try to see Mawanella, how can we get the heritage value. Right? Thank you. So that ends up the session.
Yeah.
If the audience wants to ask any question from
just
there. Give the mic.
Yeah, just to add upon some sort of insight to it. Now, we have to preserve the heritage value. So if you take this particular stretch, the preservance may be challenged by some other commercial requirement. For example, maybe you have to cope up with the traffic, and maybe road widening is required, so it will challenge the preserving activities, right? So what my point is that now if you take the particular stretch, the Mawanella particular stretch, there is a bypass, right, which could have accommodate all the commercial requirements that will allow for the particular stretch to be preserved. So any impact on the from the bypass road to the preserving activities of this particular stretch?
Yes, but currently the bypass road is functioning, but the current development proposals are used to expand the existing Old Colombo Kandy road as well. That's the reason. Therefore, the historical layer is almost demolished due to the road widening projects. That there is no point to creating a bypass road,
Actually, it's useless, I feel.
I thought the bypass was designed to avoid accidents because of the bend and all that. And as you said, the planning would have been done to preserve that with regulations. Okay, you can't do any changes to the facades of the buildings, and that could have been like development area because of the new road.
There are, architectural solutions. I think he can explain.
Yeah.
Now, even Golf Photo, even I think when you were small, you would have seen from Ambalangu to Colombo, there were very old buildings. They straight away they went and after doing the highway also they are doing that. So what they want is your square foot, what maximum floor area. So like for example, they are doing attics and all this thing. You have to give a value, right? In the sense, you can't say I have 2 kids, I want to divide my property. So some qualified person should advise how to do it, right? So I think it's again in an architect has to come in, but she is giving some kind of modifications to the old building while preserving some old architecture, and then add new additions on the back or something, or inside or some other. There are architectural solutions which you have to do because the owner doesn't care, right? We have to educate them and then work. It's very difficult. But Fort is now, I don't know, the ownership, not all are foreigners, most of them, right? So that's a different social issue. A lot of people are selling the land for the foreigners, right? So it's again, whether if you want to conserve, there's a value. Because anybody wants to do a commercial building, he likes to do that. In your case also, what earlier I explained, I advise somebody to go through the approval process, right? Approval means COC. He told, your process is very lengthy. I have a tenant. Next month I will pay a bribe and get my COC. I don't want, I said, you can save that money. He said, but I lose my rent. Already I have got the showrooms to come in. So he said, this is your keep your option. I will do my option and rent it next month. Because sometimes COC might get 3 months, 4 months. So that's okay. So
that's where the system change is needed. Right. Thank you. Any other question? I think there was a.
Sir, this is actually regarding the fire safety. Now, in the recommendation, what are the solutions for a landing when it comes to forced jumps out of windows and French windows? Because integrated in the design itself, because most of the deaths occur not just because of burning in the fire, but because people jump and they injure. Any solutions for those? Thank you.
Actually, my research was only, my scope was the fire preventive measures related to ICTAD regulations, so I think it should have, better to have in the future researches.
Now, I can give the answer to your question. You know, why they are jumping out of the balconies? Because they are scared. As some audience, I think Prasanta said, because they don't know the action they have to do when there's a fire, right? When there's a fire, the only action the occupant has to do is to find the escape route. Because any building, if it is properly designed, there's a safe fire escape route. So that route they have to go because it is 2-hour fire protected door, 3-hour fire protected. Even the fire doors are minimum 2 hours fire protected. From a door, you can bar the fire entering into your space for 2 hours. So within 2 hours, you can find the way escape. So without doing that, if you try to save your life quickly, then you jump, you die. Right? So I think we have to, that is why the fire drills are important. Fire drill, when the fire drill, you act as there's an actual fire, right? Then give the alarms, then they see how the people behave. And that creates their behavioral pattern. In case of a fire, how they will escape and how will they act, and how they will help others, help children, help women, right? So like that. So the fire drills are very important. So I think that is the answer. Fire detection is important.
Even in the South Asia, I take all the precautions to design the fire prevention. Now, if there's a smoke at any point, if someone pushes the button, then the entire building knows, and then all the systems are ready to, start. Because there we have installed a very high, precise VMS system, current intelligence system. So that prevention, we have given more priority for the prevention system than firefighting. Fighting also, we have given the important, we have taken important decisions in firefighting. All the staircases, all the lifts are fire lift. I think in our building only there are fire lifts, no? Fire lifts in the sense even all the ropes are fireproof ropes. So 2 hour fire retarded. And then all the enclosures are when the fire
lobbies.
Yes, fire lobby, they are all pressurizing. So the smokes are kept out. The staircases, the lift lobbies, the lift cars, everything is fire ready, you know.
Yeah.
So that is more important than firefighting.
The panic should be stopped. People can get panic, so if you stop panicking, then you can control. Then people will not suicide by jumping from the balcony. Yeah.
Right? So most of the, because they think it's unutilized space, right?
They
and
go
also
dump firewood sometimes.
No, all the extra, whatever, right? Most of the garbage things. And also the fire door, you can open from outside. It's not supposed, it has to be one way, a push thing. So I think if she has time or she can continue some, right? She can see how the people can understand. Close, yes. No, they open, even Bank of Ceylon high rise, it is 42 stories high. The people, if you want to get shortcut, they keep the fire door open. So luckily Sri Lanka is very lucky still. So if somebody can check, it's not the prevention is one. After that was one. Even now I know this is a single story, but otherwise you should give even all your flights, aircraft, they give as soon as you get in, it's stale information, but you should listen to that, right?
Correct.
So
station is there, yeah.
So management corporations should explain once a month or once in 6 months, this is the way to escape, not to jump. Right. Okay, thank you.
Now, I used to go to a very famous shopping complex in Colombo near the Perera cemetery. The moment I go there, I watch for the fire escape. But I saw fire escape is covered with lot of dump materials boxes, right? So I was telling my wife, if there's a fire, how can we escape? That is the awareness of the shop. The person who owned the shop, the company who owned the shop also is not aware of that. Maybe they are not doing any fire drills, right? So even as architects, quantity surveyors, professionals, when you enter a building, when you go for a hotel, you look around and see how the fire escape is there. How can I escape if there's a fire, right? This has happened to me in USA in a hotel. 5 a.m. there was a fire alarm, we had to escape. You should know where to escape and quickly as much as possible if you want to save your life. So panicking is dangerous. When somebody is panicked, they can do anything, right? So that is very important area you covered. Thank you, right? Okay. So I think we have asked reasonable questions from all 4 presenters, young presenters. So thank you very much for giving that knowledge to us. And I think we shared our experience also, senior architects. If you don't have any other questions, we can close the session. Sorry? Yeah, there's some presentation or anything? All right. Okay. Right. There's no fire.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of the technical session on architecture, and it is time to award certificates to the presenters. To give away the certificates, I would like to invite the chair of the session, Emeritus Professor Lalith de Silva. GPRC Abeysekara and Chamari Allis. HDS Asoka and authors. T. Perera and authors. Thank you, sir. Please remain on stage. I cordially invite the Rector, Southern Campus, Major General LCR Jai Surya, RSP, NDC, PSC, accompanied by Dr. A.H. Lakmali, Dean, Faculty of Built Environment and Spatial Sciences, to award a token of appreciation to the session chair, Emeritus Professor Lalith de Silva. Thank you, sir. The proceedings of the technical session on architecture are hereby concluded, and the session on multidisciplinary studies will begin at 3:45 p.m.